Welcome to Inside IT Automation, a Script Runner production.
Welcome, everyone, to this new episode of our Inside IT Automation podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Matthew Dowst, and I think Marcus and I, we are pretty excited to talk with you, Matthew. So for everyone who's maybe not familiar with what you're doing, so you're a principal consultant, and you are all into DevOps automation. That's obviously why we're talking today, which also means you're working with PowerShell, Azure Automation, Jenkins, Python. So there's a lot of things we can talk about in this conversation today, which I think is great. And you are the author of the book Practical Automation with PowerShell, which was published with Mannings, I think. And you're also publishing the PowerShell Weekly, where you kind of summarize the latest and greatest information from the community, right?
Yep.
So yeah, Matthew, welcome to this conversation. Yeah, it's great to have you with us. And so the first, so for people maybe also who don't know you, the first question would be, give us a little background on your IT journey, where you're coming from IT wise, and that would be maybe a good starting point.
So I started out early to mid 2000s working help desk. And I've always been one of those people that if I had to do something more than 3 times, that's the same. I'm just going to write a script to do it. All right. So, did that, worked a lot in VBS, obviously back in those days. And then as things progressed, I moved into more of a system administrator role, and, involved a lot of automation, going around setting up, different offices and things along those lines. And then, 14 years ago now, I went into consulting and started seeing a lot of the benefits of, making things repeatable and easy to do. So I started out, working a lot with configuration manager. So, automating around desktop deployments and, creating all of those type of things, and then moved into more of a system automation with System Center, Orchestrator, and Service Manager. And then realized about 90% of what I was doing in there was just writing PowerShell. Wasn't really using much of the, the built-in little, dropping activities. It was just writing PowerShell and linking those all together.
Okay.
So that's really evolved, since then.
So,
where, basically the majority of what I do is, the architect of our managed automation team. So building repeatable automations that we can take out to any customer and, be able to have, because, everyone's different, right? So there's no 100% solution.
Yeah.
You as well know, but, getting that 80% solution that you can then tweak and customize and maintain across, however many different environments and, different continents and things like that, to be able to kind of keep it rolling and can keep it moving.
Okay, great. So then when was the first time you used PowerShell or got in touch with PowerShell?
The first time I used PowerShell, it was, I'm trying to remember. I know the very first PowerShell script I ever wrote, or that I ever published publicly, was a trying to find the Hyper-V host of a VM. It was a simple script that just went and read the registry key on the VM to be able to come back and tell you where it was. And it was It was ugly. I think it launched it in VBS and it ran PowerShell, which then
Wow.
called some.
Okay.
I think I was like calling like the reg query and.
But it did the job, right? It did the job.
It did the job. It did the job. And then I was like, hey, this is not a bad language. It kind of kept going with it, especially working around the system center. That's what really got me.
Okay, cool. And so what would you say? What was your kind of biggest aha moments when you started using PowerShell? Any specific functionality or options or things that you could do with PowerShell back in the day?
One of the biggest ahas was being able to use that the object oriented type functionality of it, because I went to college, studied C++ and Java, and being able to kind of pass those objects around was kind of my foundation, and not something that's easy to do when you're writing VBS and batch scripts.
So you felt more at home all of a sudden with PowerShell.
It felt it's just more powerful than any of the other kind of scripting languages that I had done before, and then seeing how you can build that up into creating scripts and then modules and then even custom modules as well.
Okay, cool. So I think as mentioned, we have to talk about your book, of course. So I think that's kind of the next chapter of the questions we want to ask you.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about the process writing the book?
Yeah. So writing the book was actually a really good exercise in learning for me as well. I went into it, I'd written for, like the PowerShell conference book, and, I'd been writing blogs for 10, 15 years, working with an actual publisher though, learning the process behind it, like the first couple chapters I wrote, I sent to them and they're like, yeah, no, but it wasn't quite that bad, but it was, it's really interesting learning the process behind it, because they've been doing this since the 90s. Right. And they're like, what you need to do is you need to explain it first, then you show a diagram, then you show the code. And like that's how people are able to digest it and things like that. Yeah. So, yeah, but with the book itself, my goal is, behind it was, if I wanted to hire somebody off the street to come, kind of work on our team, what was the mindset that they would need to know, right? And it is designed around the mindset of automation, and not as much around the actual language itself, right? So it's, I do have automations in there that you could take the code and you could use it now, right? But it's really getting those fundamentals that where do I put my sensitive data, where do I store other data, how do I talk with the cloud, how do I work with other platforms outside of PowerShell, and the things that you need to think about to be able to not only build those, but then maintain them as well too. That's been a large part of my career, has been going into customers and then being like, here's this script that no one can touch, and we're afraid to. I had one customer, we were trying to automate their onboarding process, and one of the steps was to put it in this OU for an hour, and then you can move it to the other OU, because you had to put it in there because somebody wrote some script 5 years ago that nobody knew how to update. That set permission somewhere else.
That did some magic.
Trying to avoid those things, right? So that because what happens is companies will get stuck on things like that, and then they'll become afraid of automation.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I really liked when I read the book, it's actually it's here, so it's really, and I revisited of course before our conversation. It's really exactly this approach. It's not like this is a bunch of commandlets that does this and this and this, but it's more of a conceptual, like, okay, where do you start? What is your use case? And And how do you, and that's maybe also an interesting, of course, aspect, like, okay, how do you kind of measure if it really makes sense to automate what you have in front of you? You have one chapter where you describe that, where I guess from your consulting experience, it's really all about looking at the process and deciding what to do with it, right?
Yep. Yeah, making sure that you get that return on your investment.
Yeah.
You know?
And so that's really I think in very one of the interesting parts of that book. And what we were wondering is like, okay, how much time did it took to actually write this book? Do you have any idea how many hours or days or weeks it took to write this book? Yeah, I think it's 400 something pages.
Yeah. So all told, it took about 18 months of weekends and evenings. Wow. The initial writing process was, probably half of that, and then the other half being the editing and revisions and.
Oh wow! Okay, that's kind of time consuming.
Testing and
yeah.
Knowing when something is going into print, and you get that physical copy there, you want to make sure can't quite go back and make any changes and tweaks.
It's not a website or a PDF, right? That you could.
Okay, but so 18 months, that's a lot of time. So what were your main motivation for writing this book?
Really getting that information out there, right? Helping people learn that process. It's kind of what I've always evangelized, worked with my team, letting people know that automation is not something scary. It's not something that, it's something that you can do. You can, pick it up and by, applying, a few principles to it, you can start making your life a whole lot easier.
Absolutely. So what would you think are these main principles that you are kind of following, and also what is part of your book and probably your daily work with automation?
So the biggest principle is, talk about a lot is like creating like building blocks, right? And a perfect example of that in PowerShell would be like a function, and putting those, creating those to be repeatable, that you can use across multiple different platforms, but also maintainable, right? So a lot of the things that I talk about kind of early on is, you want a function to be, idempotent. You want the same result every single time you run it. You don't want to build your logic into the function. Your logic goes into the script. The function is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, like a function, right? So that way you can use it and you can easily maintain it. As I mentioned, I've maintained an entire automated platform. As like now, we're moving everything from to Microsoft Graph, right? So it has been a process of, okay, here's our function that does mailboxes, and okay, we can update that one to Microsoft Graph. All the rest of our stuff, could still be in the other Exchange module, right? Because each function is independent of the other ones, and they're, we're able to not have to just do this complete, rip and replace. We can, through attrition, slowly replace those different pieces, and and part of that is having a good solid foundation, having that built out so that you can, you're able to do that. We're not having to rewrite thousands of lines of code to change the graph at one time and push that huge change out.
So you can do it step by step, and that's probably especially interesting because I would say that Graph is still kind of a moving target from the market, from the Microsoft perspective. So let's call it dynamic. So things might change, right? Yeah. Cool. So okay. So from the audience for your book, what kind of people did you had in mind when you wrote the book?
I mean, I really anyone, right? So I mostly around IT professionals. A lot of what talk about in the book is around things to do with like system administration or even help desk or things like that. But really, for anybody looking to do automation, it could be work process automation or developers or any of those type of things. One of the best things that from the company that I've been at for 13 years now is that we're custom app dev and infrastructure consulting, and I kind of am able to straddle both, and I'm able to talk with both of them and learn from either side as I'm building these things and learning through my career. So I really tried to make the book to a wide audience. I always joke around and say I probably wrote the first PowerShell book that doesn't mention Active Directory.
I have to go back and check it. Yeah, but there are many other scenarios which I think we're also going to talk about a little bit later, which I find interesting because typically it's like, okay, what is it? Active Directory and get process and whatnot to get into PowerShell, which is a good way, of course, but it's always also good to see that there are other ways of kind of leading, kind of probably to the same result, but taking a different road, right?
Yep.
Yes. So you don't mention Active Directory in your book, but you are mentioning other automation technologies like Jenkins, for example. So how do you go about selecting the right technology for the right job?
So the big thing again, it kind of goes back to like those the building blocks, right? You build that in such a way that you can put it in Jenkins, or you could put it in Azure Automation, or the example that I use is you're building a automation to be able to create your VMs, right? And you create a form in your help desk, ServiceNow or what have you, right? Build those functions separately, and then tie them together so that if you go off of ServiceNow and you want to create a SharePoint form, right? You're only updating that one part. You're not updating the other part.
Yeah.
If you're using Jenkins, right? There's some different ways to be able to connect out to remote devices, right? So either have build it agent based, or you can do PowerShell remoting, or however that you want to do it. But whatever you want to execute on that box itself becomes one of those blocks, right? So no matter how you're connecting to it, whether you're using Azure Automation and a hybrid runbook worker, or you're using Jenkins with an agent, Jenkins remotely, you're using script runner, right? No matter what you're using, you still have that one main foundation block. Okay, this is what I'm actually going to run on this machine here.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so I think this is exactly like, okay, how to find the right technology, right, to what you want to achieve, which is also because I think people hate this quite often, where they kind of how would you compare PowerShell with Python? And this is, I think, an interesting question. How would you answer this question?
I mean, it's always about using the right tool for the job, right? There are areas where Python, just PowerShell, can't really hold a candle to it, like pandas, or AI really. I know Doug has done some amazing things, but the actual, foundations of the AI, building the, models, doing the training, things like that, or even just, some things like with the pandas to be able to do some data manipulation and stuff like that. There's no need to kind of like reinvent the wheel, right? So let's sure, I could probably do everything with a hammer, but at some point, a screwdriver and a chisel could come in handy.
Could be a better choice. Yeah.
But again, it becomes the foundation behind the automation is the same, right? And I even have that in my book where I use PowerShell to call a Word object, and then use Python to create a graph, and then insert that graph into a Word doc.
Just wanted to mention it because I think I found it in the book where I said, okay, for this particular case, Python is way more advanced, so use that to get all the analysis done, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's about, again, I think it's not about an or, it's an and, right? It's like, okay, I can use this and I can use this other technology as well together. And with what you mentioned with the concept of having these building blocks, it's always easy to also remove something, because maybe now all of a sudden AI comes along and simplifies this part of the process, and okay, then I'm letting AI doing it, right? And everything else stays, the foundation stays the same, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Cool.
Okay. So besides the data analysis and stuff like that, what are typical use cases for PowerShell compared to Python? So let's dive a little bit deeper into that.
You took away my two examples. I mean, really, that's most of what I use Python for is, data and analytics and things like that. I have some cameras around my house, right? And I was storing a ton of data trying to get that, right? So I was able to use some Python to go through and basically look at the videos, find out when there's a person inside of it, and then chop the video to just that spot and then get rid of the rest.
Okay.
Saved myself about 80% of disk space usage.
Wow.
I'm familiar enough with PowerShell where I originally wrote it to where I was using the invoke web request to do all of the downloading of the videos and actually do the chopping and calling the Fmpeg and things like that, and then just calling the Python for the specific part of it. Ended up rewriting some parts here and there. It really kind of, when you get down to like the nitty gritty of just like moving files around or working with services or things like that, they've really kind of become interchangeable, right? Obviously, PowerShell, when you're working in the Microsoft ecosystem, PowerCLI is another big one. I've always found PowerCLI to be one of the easiest modules to just pick up and start using.
Yeah, especially because they have a great documentation as well, right? That's what we had a conversation with Martin Nikolov in the other episode, who was heading the PowerCLI team at VMware, where they said yes, they were emphasizing on making it as easy as possible, having a lot of examples so people understand how they can use it, and it's still true today, I think.
Yeah, another really good example too is the ability for PowerShell to pull in .NET. All right, so to dot source those .NET objects and being able to really use that entire .NET ecosystem directly in a script without having to know how to make a module, without having to know how to write C#.
Yeah,
you can pull that down and use that. A great example is the other day, is kind of esoteric, but trying to test Kusto queries before they got put into production, right? Want to make sure there's no syntax errors or anything like that. Microsoft has a NuGet package for exactly doing that. I downloaded that DLL and called it directly from a PowerShell script and was able to put it through Pester and everything. And
awesome.
And then about an hour I had a complete test without having to go and write custom modules, which is then more code that I then have to import in.
Yeah.
And, it was a DLL and a script.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, this is kind of I would say also the kind of this again, practical way of solving problems with things that are out there already and just using it the best way possible, right? Yeah,
definitely.
So when we think about people using or trying to use PowerShell or thinking about using PowerShell, or maybe already started, so do you think there are some typical, let's say, mistakes or maybe misconceptions when people starting to use PowerShell?
Definitely. So, yeah, I look a lot at like our PowerShell on Reddit and some of the other ones, and I see a lot of those. Hey, I'm just starting in PowerShell, trying to do this. I wouldn't necessarily call it a mistake, but so many people rely on CSV files. Like in those, I'm trying to pull in this CSV file, but it's like multi-dimensional, and then they're getting all learn JSON. Like being able to kind of have the right data structures to your information that you're pulling in can play a big role. Again, it's kind of falls back into that whole object oriented, right? Everything's not just a flat list all the time.
Yeah.
So being able to understand that, I think, is a good fundamental place to be when learning PowerShell.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
Calling arrays with a plus equals. Use lists.
Oh
You
yeah,
can save yourself a ton of memory by using lists.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, error list. Yeah, doing the same. But it was a hard way to learn this.
Yep.
So yeah, covering different scenarios in your book, for example, automating SQL Server tasks. You're using DBA tools. So why aren't you using the Microsoft SQL Server standard module?
The same reason I use PNP instead of the SharePoint ones. They are just they're better written. I worked a lot with Service Manager about 10 years back and relied heavily on SMLits, from the community, which, was a million times better than if you ever saw the Service Manager commandlets. They were not the most friendly ones. But like things like DBA tools, PNP, they're a lot simpler syntax. Microsoft is great at getting you that functionality, right? Here's an engine. An engine does you great if you know how to build a body and all of those other, how to stick wheels on it and do everything, right? But the community being able to come out and create those type of things, and absolutely nothing against the PowerShell team. They are great. They're very responsive. They got that monthly call, but it is, you're going to get a pull request done a lot quicker through a community repo than you are on that. So
true.
DBA tools, PNP, those are all great modules, and they're huge. They're not going away. No one's going to abandon that with 150 different contributors to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting topic that we come across as well with our customers, because many of them kind of, even they know, like, let's take SQL Server as an example, that DBA tools is better, faster. They have more functionality, but they still stick with the Microsoft one because they say we're only kind of allowed to use modules from the official vendor. And so this is Yeah, we hear this quite often, which is a kind of I can understand this in a way, because what do you do if you have a problem? Of course, you can ask the community, which probably is more responsive than maybe Microsoft. But it's if you have Microsoft, on the label, it's obviously, especially I think for bigger customers, it's an important aspect of the whole automation scenario.
Yeah.
Did you have this discussions as well?
I've run into that as well many a times, and a lot of times, I've approached it multiple different ways. It's like, basically, you're gonna pay me all this money to rewrite something that already exists. If you want to do that,
good point. Yeah.
it's not going to get updated after I leave. Another thing I'll ask them is, like, are you guys running Linux servers? Do you run apt get update? Do you run update? And how was that different from grabbing this community module that is tried and true? I probably wouldn't go out and start grabbing random GitHub repos and throw it in someone's environment, but something with that extent of user backing and resources. But yeah, I mean, I've had some that just straight refuse, and then you do end up spending your time essentially rewriting wrappers and doing all those other things, because
but it seems to be,
it's been a mentality. It's going away. It's getting better, especially with Microsoft going open source on a lot of things. That's, nowadays you can say PowerShell is open source.
This is kind of changes the perspective for many people in a way. Which kind of sounds, looking back 10-15 years, totally impossible, right? That Microsoft is like being on a different planet, I guess. Cool. So to kind of summarizing or this part about your book, are there any plans for a new book? Do you want to have another 18 months that you want to spend on writing something else? Any plans?
There's I've had some thoughts and ideas. I've actually been considering maybe doing some more kind of, I don't know if it would be like a book, but like more of like a deep dive type
into a totally different topic,
or something, where kind of go into the thought process behind building an automation. Kind of what I laid out in the book is the foundations of how I think, right? And doing something to actually show the entire process from start to finish of here's something that I want to take. How am I going to build this out? Start building it and kind of going through there.
All right, interesting. So so it would be also more kind of, I guess, language agnostic, so more of the conceptual architectural way of going forward, planning, conceptual execution. Okay, interesting. Okay, so we should watch out for new content coming from you.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay. So to round up the PowerShell topic as well. So what are your 3 top tips for using PowerShell?
For using PowerShell is, well, I already gave you the one of using lists instead of arrays. Learning
this is really helpful.
Learn about scoping. That's a big item in there. Knowing when something is going to overwrite something else. If you're one of the nice things, and again, it can also become a kind of a downside, is like, for example, when you do a for each and you change a value inside of the thing that you're for eaching, right? PowerShell smart enough to know that, okay, that then when I get that full object back again, right, that full list or array back again, those objects have been changed. Sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes that's not what you want. So learning about that, knowing that, and then my big one is splatting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I wrote there's a module out there, PS Notes, and I have a commandlet out there. So it's get commandlet, get command splatting, and you put a command into it just like you would like get help or get command, and it will splat out the parameters for you, and then you can just paste that right into your code. So avoiding those back ticks and all that other stuff.
That's awesome. So that's definitely, we're going to add the link to that into the description of the video when we publish it. So yeah, I think
it's funny because that actually I wrote that commandlet for my book. So when you're publishing a book, your lines can't be over 77 characters long for it to go into print.
Okay.
So as you know, PowerShell can get very verbose at points. So I had to be really kind of tricky sometimes with exactly how I wrote commands.
Okay. Okay. So out of necessity, you built that commandlet. Okay, cool. Yeah, which is always a good way of doing things, right? If you have a use case for doing it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the back ticks will just cause you more headaches.
Yeah, it's a pain.
Space after one or anything like that.
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah, very, very cool tips. So now, I think we covered your book with PowerShell and other technologies. But then of course now at the end we need to talk about AI, right? So you published a post, I think a few weeks ago, maybe, or even days, about the generative AI book. Generative AI for the IT professional, I think, co-written by Chrissy Lemire, I think.
Yep. Yeah. Started reading that. It's a really good resource. I'll self-admit that I was one of the, not an AI detractor, but why would I ask AI when I can just, Google it or Bing it or whatever, And after 2 chapters of that book, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, it's basically the same thing that I've always said with automation. Right? I've gone into dozens and dozens of customers and helped them automate processes. No one has ever lost their job from something that I've automated, but people have been promoted. So, you had 2, full-time FTEs that were sitting there watching an EDI process go along all day. Right now they're on to bigger and better things because they don't have to have somebody that's sitting there watching these processes all day. They, spend maybe 30 minutes to go and check the logs at the end of the day, and they're good to go. And it's the same thing with the AI. The T-ness, all of those type of things, just being able to get that out and generate that, so much quicker, whether that's, getting a few lines of code, which can, results may vary.
Yeah,
right?
That's good.
I had a funny experience with that when I was trying to calculate quarters, and basically, I asked ChatGPT about it, and it just took get date and started like minusing 30 days. I'm like, no, no.
Whoa. That's creative.
Either way, so being able to get a lot of those things done, I use it a lot in my regular life too. I coach my daughter's soccer team or football for our international audiences, and I write these messages out to the parents, and you got to make sure your wording is right when you're talking to parents, especially when it comes to their children's sports. And so I'll put like 2 or 3 bullet points in the chat. Write me a text message to parents about this, and it gives me this nice, oh, dear parents, it just saves me that a lot of the tedious work, the things that I don't want to be doing. The reason that I got behind automating, right? more I can
Absolutely.
automate with it, the better.
Are there any other takeaways from this book? I haven't read it yet, but I think I also need to. Is there anything else where I said, "Wow, yeah, this was like, okay, this is really helpful."
Yeah. The big thing is like building those prompts, right? Learning that it does become a new thing, right? People always joke, folks in IT, just Google stuff all day long, right? It's like, to an extent, yes, but they know what they're looking for. They know how to get to what it is that they need, and it's along the same lines of that, but with a different type of syntax. So it's kind of like retraining yourself to instead of using those SEO type keywords that how to put in and getting that information from where you need, how to manipulate the AI to give you exactly what it is that you need, and to know when to kind of pull back, right, at some point.
And being able to verify it if it's really what you want, right, and if it's correct and things like that.
Especially learning about like things like tokens, right? They do a really good job of just a good brief explanation of what tokens are, what you need to be aware of them, and that's about it. There's if you look online, you see a lot of things about tokens, and it's just you start getting those that meme with all the dollar numbers going around. It's like, no, you just need to know what they are. You need to know when why all of a sudden my AI is acting really freaking weird. Oh, I exceeded my tokens, and what does that mean, and how can I be able to work around that and work with it and things like that. So definitely some great information I've found in there.
Okay, cool. So I definitely need to read it, I think.
So that sounds AI is already pretty important in your daily work, right?
Oh yeah, and it's getting to be more and more. I mentioned one of the first ones I use is Doug Fink has that PowerShell AI module. I use that thing all the time if I'm looking for some code. Like find a GitHub. Hey, tell me what this is doing, instead of having to dig through and there's a command that I don't quite understand. Having it be able to pull that and get that information in there and do all that. It's been extremely helpful.
Yeah. And he even now he published the new model, right? PowerShell AI Assistant. Which
I haven't had a chance to play with that one yet.
I looked at an example. We built something together, Doug and I, to analyzing some Excel sheets with obviously import Excel, but also using AI, and it's amazing. It's really
the Copilot for Teams is amazing as well. Here's my summary of what we just talked about. I love that.
Yeah, it makes life a lot easier with all that, as you said, repetitive tasks. So I guess we already we kind of come to the last question. Is you already answered that, I think, in a way, which would be about what are your go-to AI services? So I can see ChatGPT, the PowerShell AI module, Copilot. Is there anything else where you're using AI services to get things done?
Like I mentioned, I've used some of the like TensorFlow and PyTorch. Used some of those for being able to do some motion capture and image capture. Looking at videos, going back through. At one point, I was trying to train it to organize all my photos of kids and dogs and everything, but they've since built some pretty good tools out there to be able to do that. ChatGPT, I've been using that, does just, I don't tend to be very verbose, especially when I'm writing. I tend to be very kind of straight.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to use that to kind of expand upon what I'm typing has been extremely helpful. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, if there's Copilot, I haven't put it into VS Code yet or into Visual Studio just yet. I tested it out early in the original like GitHub Copilot, and it started giving command lines that didn't exist. I need to go back and visit that again.
Yeah. I mean, there's still some kind of hallucinating happening, but it's getting better. Yeah. Definitely. I have to say, because I'm kind of into music, I came across a service. It's called Suno AI, and you can create music with
awesome.
one line of prompt. It's mind-blowing. It's amazing. You can make it a hip hop song, make it a metal song, or whatever. So
yeah, I have to definitely check that out, because I love music. Like music theory, all that.
Okay.
Absolutely fascinates me. I could not keep a beat for more than 5 seconds to save my life. I know my limits, and I know that I cannot keep a beat. I cannot.
Yeah.
I have no tone when I sing.
Yeah, but now with these services, I mean, they're creating. I published it on YouTube. I created 2 songs, one for the World Backup Day, which is a hip hop song, and one for just about PowerShell. Awesome. And after 10 seconds, you have a song. It's amazing. So I think there's a lot of things that we can that will appear in the AI space. So, and I think I was, as you mentioned that in the beginning, I was kind of also kind of skeptical at the beginning. But once I started seeing what ChatGPT can do, or what DALL-E can do, or what other services can do, it's really it's the life savior.
Yeah, and I don't remember who said it. So I don't want to misquote somebody, but there's that famous quote that AI is not going to replace anybody in IT, but people who use AI.
Yeah.
Will
absolutely. I hear this from Doug a lot, and he's right. I think so. Absolutely, yeah. So I think we will see a lot of more things happening with AI. Great. So I think with this, we are at the end of our conversation. It was very interesting, very informative, a lot of fun as well. So I think, awesome. We were able to cover a lot of topics. So thanks again, Matthew, for being with us. And
thanks for having me.
And so see you next time, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Bye-bye.